it's time to expand on the knowledge we've gathered so far. So far, we've mastered filtering in many different ways. But the filters that we have used have been relatively simple in kind. We've been answering relatively simple questions, things that, although valuable, are simple in nature. Now, in a professional environment, the queries we will write are often much more complex and often involve multiple tables. Now, so far, all our exercises have involved a single table, a single question, and a single outcome. But what if we wanted to select data from multiple tables? I know you've been asking yourself this question. Hey, what if I wanted to show an employee beside his salary? What if I wanted to show their information? I only see the ID. Things like that go into what we call multi-table selects. Multi-table selects are combining the data from multiple tables in order to create a visualization that can span relationships across tables. So, what if you want to combine data from multiple tables? Well, let's say we wanted to show the salary of an employee beside his information. Well, first off, let's start with a simple query. Right here in front of you, you see a select statement, a very simple select statement. We see select a.employee name, concat a first name, a last name, so we're concatenating the first and the last name, and b.salary. So what are A and B? Well, when we go to the from clause, what we can see here is that we're selecting from the table employees, but we're creating an alias. Now, you've seen the as keyword being used over here in the select statement to generate a name for a column when we use a function. Well, that same principle can be applied to tables. Over here, you see employees as A being an alias for employees. So now we can alias any column that is in employees through A, like A.employee number. And salaries as B, so B.salary. Okay, so over here we see this relatively simple query. But what will happen here? Well, combining data is hard, right? So when we look at this, what we're doing is we're getting the employee number, we're getting the first and last name, and we're getting the salary. But what's linking it together? Well, what happens here, basically, is because we're not putting a link in place, because we're not saying, hey, this employee number belongs to this salary employee number, when you execute this query, what's going to end up happening is you're going to assign every single salary from the salary table to every single individual multiple times. So here you can see that George Facilio has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so forth. He has so many salaries. Why is that? Why would it add so many salaries to one person? Well, when you look at this from the relationship standpoint, table A, which was employees, and table B, which was salaries, are linked through a primary and a foreign key. What does this mean? Well, in employees, every employee is denoted by an employee number, our primary key. And in table B, every salary is linked to an employee number. So that means that each individual employee and his salary is linked to the number. But the number is a reference to the employee number. It isn't a different number, it is the foreign key. It references the primary key. When we write this query, what's happening is, well, we're not saying anywhere that, hey, this key, this 20 is linked to this 20. We're saying, hey, select me Mo Bini and then select salaries. There's no link. But what if we could use the where clause to create that link? That's a good idea. That's a great idea. So let's try that out. Over here, you see the same query. Select a.employee number, concat the first name and last name, get the salary, and then we see from employees and the same alias from salaries as B. And then we see a where clause. And in that where clause, we're saying, hey, the alias of A, so A, do it where the employee number in employees is equal to the employee number in salaries. Interesting. We can use the where clause to do something more than filtering. Well, this is technically a filter because we're saying, hey, only give me data back when the employee number of employee is equal to the salary that I'm trying to visualize, the employee number that's there. And what we see now is way, way less data. Okay, there are still 17, 18, 19 salaries because Georgie Facillo has had multiple raises throughout his career, so we're seeing every single raise. But as you could see in the previous slide, his salaries were all the way in the 500s, so there were way too many salaries being assigned to him. So let's try this out in Valentina Studio. And so over here in Valentina Studio, I've abbreviated the query a bit to be a bit simpler. We're only selecting the employee number and the salary. And so let's execute that real quick. And this query still is going to take some time because there are thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of records. And so what we can see here is that we have all of the salaries linked to a specific individual where the employee number is given. So let's do something more. Let's do an order by a.employee number. And let's just order the data so that it comes back in the right order. And so what we can see here is that starting at row 18, we're getting all of the salaries for each individual, meaning we're getting the salaries plus their raises, their initial salary all the way up to their most recent raise. And if we added b.fromDate, we would see that. We can see that each individual record of a salary is unique and it's going all the way up until the future. But then again, when we did this, what we're going to see happen is way too much data being correlated because we're not doing anything. We're not linking. We're aggregating based on nothing. So each employee number is going to get each salary from B. And you can see how long this query is running. I probably will run out of memory before it's done. So that's why we do the where clause. That's why we do the link. And that's why we get 17 salaries back. So you can kind of see where we're going here. When we have primary keys and when we have foreign keys, and when we want to select from multiple tables, it's important to lay that link. Otherwise, you'll get into scenarios where you're aggregating data, and for each record from a different table, it's going to add it to each record from the original table, and you'll get 500, 5,000, 5 million results because it's just combining everything. Great, good job. We did it. We got the right query. But what did we actually do? Well, we joined two data sets. We joined them through the employee number. And a join combines columns from one table with those of another. That is essentially what a join is. A join is a combination from one table with another table. And the combination happens to happen on the link between two pieces of data. In this case, the employee number from employees and the employee number from salaries, which happen to have a correlation. Now, joins take a column from one table that can map to the column of another table. That's a way to summarize it. So a join aggregates data from two tables, but it does it based on taking one column from one table that can map to the column of another table. Again, employee number to employee number. The most common approach is to link the primary key to the foreign key. This is the most common approach of doing a join. Joins usually happen from a primary key to a foreign key. There are instances in which you could say, hey, the data in this table, well, these records can kind of map to these records coincidentally, and they may have the same data. This could happen if you're talking about cities and you have two tables that have cities and You just so happen to want to match them. It's not really a primary to a foreign key relationship. It just happens to be two tables that have data that is common. But in 99% of the cases, I can't say 99%, but you get what I'm saying. In most cases, you're linking a primary key to a foreign key. Now, let's look at the different ways of joining data. Because what we just did here, although it's awesome, it is a very basic way of doing a join. We use the where clause. We use the know-how that we learned during filtering. But now you can kind of see that, hey, if this is something that is super common to do, there must be a better way of doing it. SQL must give us ways of joining data, and you would be right. So let's take a look at those.